Hi, my name's Bonnie. I'm the owner of Farmer's Daughter Floristry and Events. And today, in collaboration with Beige, we're going to run you through some basic flower care and how to make a local seasonal arrangement at home. So first up, we've got a few tools, which there's a bit more information on the Beige site. We're going to have a nice sharp pair of snips. If you do have them available, these are rose trimmers, so they help to trim any roses and avoid any spikes or anything. And a nice strong piece of tie for us to tie the hand-tied arrangement. The first thing that we're going to do is select our flowers. So here we've just got a selection of seasonal flowers available here in winter at the moment. We've got a base foliage and then a couple of feature arrangements. What we try and look for is a few different shapes in our flowers. So our basic foliage here we've got is pittosporum. It's a lovely green foliage, nice and hardy, and gives a good base to our arrangement. We've got some carnations for a little bit of texture and flair to give it a tiny feature flower. We've got some beautiful seasonal local roses, this one here grown on our farm. And to give us a little bit of height and shape, we've also got some stock, which has a beautiful scent to it as well. So the first thing we're going to do is prep our flowers. So to do that, we want to make sure we're removing any foliage that's going to be in the water of our arrangement. If we have foliage in the water, it builds bacteria in the water, and generally the life of your flowers is going to be a lot shorter. So we want to make sure that we're trimming everything down from the main center point of our base. So our main base there, we want to pull everything down from there. I've already prepped the foliage. We've got some beautiful roses here, so we just want to pull them apart using our rose trimmers, pulling off all of the foliage that's going to be towards the bottom of the arrangement and ensuring that it's not in the water. For our stock, this foliage is quite stinky when it gets in the water. It is a family that's Brassicaceae family, so it's related to kale and broccoli and things like that. While delicious, it's not so great when it gets stuck in water, so we want to take all of those leaves off. They also go a bit of a yellow colour as well as they get a bit older, so we want to make sure that we're just left with the beautiful blooms there. For the carnations, there's not a whole lot of foliage there, so we just want to make sure that we're pulling off any smaller blooms towards the bottom that aren't going to be helpful in our arrangement. And just getting nice solid pieces. You can also cut these to make the most of the arrangement, to make sure we're not having too much waste. We want to minimize waste wherever we can, particularly when you're dealing with flowers from home. Now that all of our flowers are prepped, we're ready to start working. So the technique I'm going to show you today is a traditional spiral technique. You'll see this in most local florists. It's how they get all the stems beautifully lined up, and it allows you to get a great shape of your overall bouquet. So we're going to be working into a fishbowl vase today. This technique can be used for any kind of size arrangement, any vase. It can be varied, and it's the basic technique that we always learn and teach our students first up. So the first step we're going to do is to work with our foliage. So our foliage acts as the base of our arrangement, and then our flowers work through that foliage. So what we're going to do is choose a nice few pieces of foliage that are nice and simple, so they're a good single piece. There's not too many pieces coming off it. That's when we get into trouble, makes things a little bit difficult. So we're going to start with our first piece. Now I'm right-handed, so this is going to be spiraled down left to right. If you were left-handed, it will be the other way. I wish I could show you, but I can't do it the other way. So we're going to go with right-handed today. So working with our starting piece, we want to build it across in a downward diagonal angle from left to right. So we're putting a piece in and then slightly rotating the bouquet clockwise. Putting a piece in and rotating clockwise. You want to build this up to get the majority of your foliage in. We'll leave a few pieces out towards the edge of the arrangement. And then we want to start with our larger blooms. So I like to start with my roses, so get a nice few pieces of roses, and you're placing them through the foliage and then left to right in a downward diagonal and then straight into your hand there. So this point here, there's no foliage below that, and that's essentially where our tie is going to be and where our flowers hit the edge of our vase. Just going to work through the base of the arrangement, turning each time we place something. The turning helps us to get a nice circular shape of our bouquet and keeps everything nice and even. We've got our 5 beautiful roses in there. We're going to move through putting in some smaller little carnations. So just working them evenly throughout the flowers that you've already placed. Got a beautiful burgundy today in carnations as well as a nice bright orange. So we're going to work with the orange last. Just placing them through that foliage, through the center point, and turning each time we place something. The final flower that we want to work with is our tall stalk. That helps us get a fair bit of shape to our arrangement. So we want to place those evenly around as well. And work through the center and down, pulling from the bottom or placing along the side. So we get a nice even shape. Once you've got a good shape there, you can start working back through your varieties again. So we might place a few more pieces of foliage towards the outside to give us a little bit more interest. And then working the finer, lighter blooms. In this case, they're the orange variegated carnations. Always keeping a nice loose hand as we're going. If we're holding the bouquet too tight, it will sometimes mean that we don't quite get the shape that we'd like. And always working through to give us that nice spiral shape towards the bottom. We're working upwards to one side there so that you get a nice all-round arrangement. We want something to look natural as it was in the garden, not overwork something so that it's no longer holding its own shape. The shape of seasonal flowers is what makes them so beautiful, so we want to let them do the work for us. And sometimes that might mean that they don't quite go in the direction that you'd hoped they would. So we've got a beautiful base there. I always like working with seasonal blooms here in everything that I do for all of my weddings and events, and that sometimes means that you get a few really interesting pieces to work with. Here we're in autumn going into winter, and so there aren't as many blooms around, but there are some really beautiful little sticks and berries and foliages that add a lot more interest to the bouquets instead of just flowers. So I've cut here a little bit of magnolia bloom. So you can see it's just the little buds there that will eventually be beautiful magnolia flowers. But this time of year, they're just really interesting sticks. So we're going to add a couple of pieces into our arrangement here, just to give that seasonal look and to place them around the bottom. We're now at the most important part of the arrangement, which is tying it off and placing it into our vase. So the first thing that you want to do is cut the stems down so that they fit into the vase that you're working with. As you can see, my fishbowl vase here is quite a bit shorter than my stems. So we're going to measure against the table is I find the easiest way. And you can see then that the edge of the table is the bottom and where you want to cut these off to. So remember that you can always cut more, but you can't put the stems back on. So try and do it in a few steps if you're a little bit nervous to start with. You see that's still a little bit too tall. about right. And we're going to get our nice tight ribbon. Now I've used a jute string here, but you can just about use anything, kitchen twine, things like that, that are really going to hold tight together. So holding it in your left hand, going to run the tie through my index and middle finger, hold onto it and then wrap around the whole bouquet. Nice and tight, high and tight is the general rule. And then we're just going to pull ends and tie tight into a little knot. We're going to cut off our tails. And pop into our vase. There we go. Our seasonal, local bloom, hand-tied floral arrangement for home.